Now we're gonna mix in the metallic powder to the part A's, all the different part A's. I'm actually wearing a painter's mask, a respirator mask, and I also think you should do this outside. The metallic powder is actually like makeup, or it's like the metallic that they use in car and boat paint. It's very fine powder that gets in the air almost immediately, and it's really not good to breathe because it's not air. So you can even see the dust and the sparkles coming off of that container. The only reason I'm mixing it inside is so that you can see kind of how to mix it in. Most of the time I would take these containers outside where there's a little bit of a breeze, and I would still wear a mask. Once all the powder gets mixed into the liquid, you don't have to worry about the dust coming back out of that container. So you can take it outside, mix in the metallic powder, and then bring it back in, and you won't induce any of that powder into the air. And it takes a little bit to mix. Just mix slowly with the stir stick, get it down in the epoxy. You're going to begin to see how awesome these powders look as well. You can also do this with an electric drill, again on a low speed. If you're going to be using an electric drill for a lot of this process, I recommend that you have either acetone or something to clean the drill off, or 2 or 3 different cheap paddles that you can switch on and off. You don't want to try to mix the colors too much, especially if you have a dark highlight and a really light base coat. You don't want to get any of the dark highlights in the base coat yet. Here's one of my highlights, just pouring it into the part A. I'm going to do the same thing with that, just mix in the highlights. And if you look closely, you can see the powder getting all over the place. It gets in the air because it's so fine. Make sure you scrape the edges when you're doing this, just to get any powder off the edges of the mixing containers. Once all the metallics are mixed in, you're ready to start the process of the countertop. And you want to separate all these parts while the primer is curing, because you'll have plenty of time. You got a couple hours to mess with this stuff. So separate it out, mix in your metallics, because it's not going to take you very long. We're getting ready to mix the base coat. And so all you need to do is pick up your part B that you've already separated and pour it right out into the part A. And you're going to want to mix that. Now, again, we're mixing it with a stir stick, but you're going to probably want to drill if you have one. You're going to get a pretty bad forearm pump from this, because it's so much epoxy for the base coat, but the highlights are easy with stir sticks. But it has to be mixed really well on low speeds, scraping the sides and the bottom a lot. What I'm doing here is I'm just scraping the bottom of the mixing container, and I'm scraping the sides of the mixing container, trying to get the part B throughout the entire mixture. If you end up pouring out a base coat or a highlight without it being mixed fully, then there'll be some part A that won't get hard. It's a bad deal. You're going to want to mix this, if you're doing it by hand, for probably 3 to 4 minutes. If you're doing it with a mixing paddle on a drill on low RPM, you're going to probably do it for about 1.5 to 2 minutes. But even if you use a drill, make sure you grab a stir stick and scrape the sides and bottom really well.